I need to tell you about something that happened to me 3 years ago. I still think about it almost every day, and I've never really talked about it until now. It was a Tuesday night in March. Nothing special about it. I'd gone to bed around 11 after watching some TV and scrolling on my phone like I always do. My apartment is small, a one-bedroom in a building that's probably older than I am. I lived alone at the time. The lock on my front door worked fine, deadbolt and everything. I woke up at 3:47 a.m. I remember checking my phone because I couldn't fall back asleep right away. You know that feeling when you wake up and something in your body just knows something's wrong. Not like a nightmare. I didn't wake from a bad dream. I just opened my eyes, and the first thing I noticed was that my bedroom door was open. I keep it closed. Always. There's no reason for it, just a habit. I lay there for maybe 30 seconds, trying to convince myself I'd opened it before bed and just forgotten. But I knew I hadn't. That's when I saw her. She was standing at the foot of my bed, just standing there. It was dark, but there's a street light outside my window, and my eyes had adjusted enough to see a shape. A woman. I could make out her silhouette, shoulder-length hair, wearing what looked like dark clothes. She wasn't moving. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared at her, and she stood there, and we were both completely still. It felt like 10 seconds, but was probably longer. My heart was moving so fast I thought I might get sick. Then she turned around and walked out of my bedroom. I heard her footsteps on my hardwood floor. Slow, normal footsteps, like she was just leaving a room. I heard her walk down my hallway toward my living room. I sat up in bed, and I remember my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grab my phone. I turned on my flashlight and got out of bed, and I looked down the hallway. Nothing. My living room was empty. My front door was still locked from the inside. Every window in my apartment was locked. I checked every room, every closet, under my bed, behind my shower curtain. Nothing. I called the police. They came about 20 minutes later, and they were professional about it, but clearly thought I was either lying or had dreamed the whole thing. They found no signs of forced entry. No windows broken. Nothing stolen or disturbed. One officer suggested I'd been half asleep. That sleep paralysis sometimes comes with hallucinations. He meant it kindly, but I knew what I'd seen. The thing that stays with me, the thing I haven't been able to explain to anyone, is that nothing felt like a hallucination. I've had nightmares before. I know what my brain does when I'm dreaming. This wasn't that. The detail was wrong. In dreams, things are soft around the edges. This was sharp. The sound of her footsteps was real. The temperature of the air when she was there was different, colder. That's not something you hallucinate in a way that feels that convincing. I moved out of that apartment 3 months later. I didn't tell my landlord why. I just said I was relocating for work. I have never gone back. I haven't had anyone stand at the foot of my bed since then. But for a long time, I couldn't sleep with my bedroom door open. Even now, when I feel myself starting to drift off, there's always a second where I think about that silhouette and whether she's still out there somewhere, doing this to other people. I've never figured out who she was or how she got inside my apartment. Some questions don't have answers. You just have to live with them. I want to tell you about something that happened to me 3 years ago. Something I still think about when I'm trying to fall asleep. I was living in a studio apartment in Portland at the time. Small place, maybe 400 square feet. The bedroom was separated from the living room by a doorway without a door. I liked it that way because I could see straight through to the front entrance if I needed to. One night I woke up around 3 a.m. I don't remember having a nightmare or hearing anything specific. I just opened my eyes. There was enough ambient light from the street coming through my window that I could make out shapes in the room. My TV was against the wall to my left. My dresser across from the foot of my bed. And then I noticed something standing in the hallway. At first I thought it was just my eyes adjusting. You know how you can see things that aren't really there when you're half asleep. But I watched it for a solid 10 seconds and it didn't disappear. It was just there.
A person-shaped silhouette standing in the hallway between my bedroom and living room, maybe 8 feet away from me. I remember my first instinct wasn't fear. It was confusion. My second thought was that I must have left my front door unlocked. I lay completely still. I was trying to figure out if this was real or if I was still dreaming. That's the thing about being jolted awake. There's that split second where you're not sure which side of consciousness you're on. The figure didn't move. It was just standing there, completely motionless. I could see the outline of a head and shoulders, what looked like arms hanging down at its sides. I decided to turn on my lamp. My nightstand was to my right, and I slowly reached over and felt for the switch. I remember my hand was shaking a little. I flicked it on. The hallway was empty. I mean, completely empty. I could see the full width of the hallway now, the edge of my kitchen to the left, the wall to the right. Nothing there. My front door was closed and locked. The chain was on. I sat up in bed for probably 5 minutes just staring into that hallway. My heart was hammering. I told myself it was sleep paralysis or a hypnagogic hallucination. One of those things where your brain creates an image while you're between sleeping and waking. That's the logical explanation, and I went with it. I turned off the lamp and lay back down. Maybe 2 minutes later, I heard it. The sound of a floorboard creaking. It came from the living room, from the direction of my front door. A single creak, like someone had shifted their weight on the old wooden floor. I turned the lamp back on. I got out of bed this time. I walked into the living room and checked the door again. Still locked. The windows were all secured. I checked the small bathroom. Empty. No shower curtain hiding anything. I had one of those clear plastic ones anyway. Everything was fine. Everything was locked and empty. But here's what I couldn't explain. In my bedroom, on my nightstand, I had a digital alarm clock. And when I had turned on the lamp the first time and looked at the hallway, I'd gotten a glimpse of my alarm clock display. It read 3-7. After I turned the lamp off and waited 2 minutes for that floorboard creak, I went back to my bedroom and checked the clock again. It read 3:42. 35 minutes had passed. I had no memory of those 35 minutes. I sat on my bed and I tried to think through what could have happened. Did I fall asleep again? I didn't feel groggy or disoriented. I felt alert. I felt like those minutes were just missing. I got my phone and called the non-emergency police line. I told them someone might have broken into my apartment, that I'd heard a noise. I didn't mention the figure in the hallway or the missing time because I knew how that would sound. The dispatcher said they'd send someone over. The officer arrived about 20 minutes later. He was professional about it. He checked the door and windows, looked in all the closets, even checked behind my shower curtain. Everything was secure. Nothing disturbed. He asked me if I was on any medications, if I'd been stressed. I said no, and he left. He was polite about it, but I could tell he thought I'd had some kind of episode. After he left, I didn't go back to sleep. I sat on my couch with all the lights on until morning. Over the next week, I had the locks changed. I installed a chain lock on my bedroom window. I was checking my apartment constantly, but nothing else happened. No more figures in the hallway. No more missing time. It was like someone had gotten exactly what they wanted and then left. I moved out 2 months later. I told my landlord I'd found a place closer to work, which was true. I just didn't mention that the reason I was looking so hard was because I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been in that apartment with me that night. What gets to me, even now, is not knowing. If someone had broken in, what were they doing during those 35 minutes? Why did I see that figure? And why can't I remember what happened after I turned the lamp off? Sometimes I wonder if I should have fought back, if I'd gotten up, if I'd actually confronted whatever that was. But mostly I'm grateful that I didn't, because I still have no idea what I would have been confronting.
Shape of a man, shoulders broad, head tilted slightly forward like he was looking at something in his lap, or maybe thinking about something. He was completely still. My first instinct was to turn around and lock myself in my bedroom, call the police. But Something made me stay frozen in the hallway. I wanted to make sure I was actually seeing this. I blinked hard, looked away and looked back. He was still there. "Who are you?" I said. My voice came out hoarse. He didn't move, didn't respond, didn't even look up. I turned on the hallway light. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the man in the armchair looked up at me, and I realized something was completely wrong with the scene. He was wearing my clothes, the gray cardigan I'd worn 3 days ago. Not a similar cardigan, my cardigan Daiki. I recognized the small coffee stain on the left cuff. "You need to go back to bed," he said. His voice was calm, measured. It sounded wrong coming from him, like he was reading from a script he'd practiced. "What are you?" I started, but he raised one hand. "Back to bed," he said again. "It's not time yet." I don't know why, but I did what he said. I walked back into my bedroom and closed the door. I locked it. Then I called 911, told them someone was in my house, gave them my address. The operator said police were en route. I waited, maybe 5 minutes. I heard my front door open. The police, I thought. But then I heard voices, multiple voices, having a conversation in my living room like they were at a party. I didn't recognize any of them. The police arrived about 2 minutes later. When I came out of my room, there was nobody there. The living room was empty. My cardigan was hanging on the back of the armchair, folded neatly. The cops searched the house, found nothing. No signs of forced entry. Nothing missing or disturbed. They were professional about it, but I could see they thought I'd imagined it or made it up. They left after about 20 minutes. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen with all the lights on, waiting for morning. The next day, I had a friend come over and help me install a security camera in my living room, something I should have done a long time ago. When I set it up, I realized I could check the footage from that night. I watched the recording from around 2:45 a.m. to 3:15 a.m. The living room was empty the entire time. No one appeared. No one sat in the armchair. But in a frame at exactly 3:07 a.m., you can see my cardigan is no longer on the back of the chair where I always leave it. It's draped over the armchair like someone had just taken it off. The thing I haven't figured out is this. I watched that footage the next day, on the current camera system, in my current house. But the cardigan in the video isn't the cardigan I own now. It looks worn, faded, like it's aged 10 years in the 3 days since I wore it. I've kept the camera running since then. I check it every morning. For the past 2 months, everything's been normal. But twice, I've noticed my clothes arranged differently than I left them. Once my entire closet was reorganized. I'd opened the closet and just stopped, confused, because nothing was how I'd organized it. I haven't touched the recording from that night. It's saved to a separate drive. Sometimes I think about deleting it. Sometimes I think about showing someone. But mostly I just leave it alone. Last week, I woke up at 3:07 a.m. again. That's specific time. My cardigan was on the armchair. I turned on every light in the house and checked the security footage. The armchair has been empty all night. But here's what's getting to me. I know what time 3:07 is on the video because that's when the cardigan moved. But I just realized something when I checked the timestamp on the video again today. The timestamp says the file was created on the date I watched it, not the night it was supposedly recorded. It's like watching a video of something that's happening right now, on a camera pointed at an empty room. I don't live there anymore. I'm staying with my sister, but I still own the house. Sometimes I think about going back, watching the camera feed from somewhere safe. But I'm afraid if I go back there, I might sit down in that armchair without meaning to, and I might not be the one sitting in it anymore.
I've never been great at sleeping through the night. I wake up constantly, sometimes from nothing, sometimes from sounds I can't place. That particular Tuesday, I woke at around 3 a.m. the way I usually do. That sudden jolt where you're just conscious again with no transition. My bedroom was dark, except for the streetlight bleeding through the gap in my curtains, creating that gray-blue darkness you get in the city at night. I was lying on my side, facing the wall, and I didn't move right away. I just laid there for a minute, trying to figure out what had pulled me awake this time. That's when I noticed something was off about the light pattern on my wall. There was a shape blocking part of the streetlight, a silhouette, but not sharp and defined like you'd expect. It was blurred, like whatever was causing it was moving very slightly. Or maybe I was just waking up, and my vision wasn't clear yet. I blinked hard a few times. The shape didn't change. It was coming from the direction of my dresser, which sits against the wall opposite my bed, underneath the window. My dresser is old oak, pretty tall, and I keep a lamp on it that I always turn off before bed. The shape was roughly person-sized. My first thought was that maybe a tree branch was moving in the wind, but I live in an apartment building in the middle of the city. There's no tree near my window. My second thought was that I was still half asleep and my mind was filling in details that weren't there. I've done that before. That hypnagogic thing where you're not fully awake and you see things that vanish the moment you're actually conscious. So I closed my eyes and opened them again, hard, trying to snap fully awake. When I looked back at the wall, the shape was still there. My heart rate picked up a little, but I wasn't panicked yet. Confused, mostly. I shifted my weight slightly and lifted my head off the pillow just a bit, changing my angle to the window. That's when I saw it clearly. There was definitely someone standing at my dresser. Not a tree branch. Not a trick of the light. A person, standing completely still, facing away from me toward the wall. I could see the outline of their head, shoulders, the length of their back. They were wearing what looked like dark clothes. They weren't moving. They were just standing there. I think the moment where I should have screamed or jumped up, I just didn't. I was too confused. My brain was trying to process how someone got into my locked apartment and why they were standing at my dresser, perfectly motionless, at 3 in the morning. The fear came, but it came slow, like cold water rising gradually rather than a sudden plunge. I stayed completely still, watching. I wasn't sure what else to do. Part of me was certain that if I moved, they would move too, and I didn't want to find out what that would look like. The figure didn't turn around. Didn't acknowledge that I was awake. Just stood there, facing the wall. I tried to focus on details. The person wasn't very tall, maybe 5'6" or 5'7". Their hair was dark, shoulder length or longer, hard to tell exactly from the silhouette. I couldn't make out a face, obviously, but the way they held their head was strange. Not looking down at the dresser, not looking up, just facing straight ahead at the wall like they were reading something written there. My dresser is mostly clear. I have the lamp, a few framed photos, some loose change, a pair of sunglasses. Nothing that would take someone's attention. Nothing they'd need to read or study. I don't know how long I laid there watching them. Could have been 30 seconds. Could have been a minute. Time felt weird in that moment, elastic and uncertain. My mouth was completely dry. I was breathing shallow breaths through my nose, trying to be quiet, even though I knew they already knew I was awake. Or at least, they might know. The uncertainty of it was almost worse than the certainty would have been. Then I did something that I'm not sure was brave or stupid. I sat up in bed. Quick, one motion. I didn't yell or make threats or anything. I just sat up so they could definitely see that I was awake and aware of them. The figure immediately dropped their arms. I hadn't even noticed their arms were raised, but apparently they'd been at chest height or something, and they dropped them to their sides in one fast motion. Then they turned around. They turned around fast, and the angle of the streetlight changed, and their face went into shadow completely. All I could see was a silhouette of a head looking at me. We were both still. We were both staring at each other across the dark room, and I couldn't see their face. And they could probably see my face in the dim light since I was closer to the window somehow in my mind. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, just reached over, and grabbed it without looking away. The motion made the figure's head tilt slightly, like they were curious about what I was doing. I turned on the flashlight function and pointed it directly at them. The light hit them and they were just gone. Not there anymore. Just gone. The space where they'd been standing was empty. My dresser was empty. The wall behind it was empty. The light was shining on bare wall and furniture, and there was no one there at all. I kept the light on them for maybe 5 seconds, and then I swept it around the room. The dresser, the floor, the closet door, the corner. Nothing. Empty room. I was alone. I turned all the lights on in the apartment. Every single light. I checked the doors, both locked from the inside. I checked the windows, all locked. I sat in my living room for the rest of the night, doors locked, every light on, waiting for morning. I've thought about that night for 3 years now. I've told a few people, and they say what people always say. Stress, sleep paralysis, a hallucination, my brain making up something scary during that twilight moment between sleep and waking. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I know that when I finally started sleeping in that room again, maybe 6 months later, I started waking up at exactly 3:02 a.m. every single night. Not before, not after. Always 3:02 a.m. And there's always this sense, right when I open my eyes, that something has just moved. That something has just left the room. Something standing by my dresser, watching me sleep. I don't look at my dresser anymore when I wake up. I've learned not to. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't turned on that light. I need to start by saying that I live alone. I've lived alone for 3 years now, in a small one-bedroom apartment in suburban Ohio. Nothing dramatic about it. White walls, standard furniture, a lease that's up for renewal next month. I'm telling you this because it matters that I know every single thing in my bedroom. Around 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, I woke up. Not suddenly. I didn't jolt awake or anything like that. I just opened my eyes. I was lying on my side facing the window, and I remember feeling thirsty. That's what I was thinking about, getting water. But before I could move, I noticed something wrong with the shadows in my room. The small reading chair I keep in the corner near my closet. The one I never actually sit in because the wooden frame digs into your back. It had weight in it. Someone was sitting there. I could tell by how the fabric was compressed, how the shadows fell differently across the seat than they normally did. I didn't move. I'm not going to lie and say I was brave. I just froze. My eyes adjusted slowly, and I could make out the shape of a person. Shoulders. A head. They were absolutely still. Not fidgeting. Not breathing heavily that I could hear. Just sitting there in the dark, about 8 feet away from my bed. My first thought was that I was dreaming. That's what I kept telling myself. But I could feel the cotton of my sheets against my skin. Could feel the slight ache in my shoulder from lying on my side. The sensations were too specific, too real. I watched him, and I knew it was a man, though I couldn't make out his face, for what felt like an impossible amount of time. Probably only 30 seconds, but it stretched. I was trying to figure out what to do. Call 911? But my phone was on the nightstand, and reaching for it would require movement, would let him know I was awake and aware of him. Run? My bedroom door was maybe 6 feet in the other direction, and he was between me and the hallway. I started to think about the locks on my apartment. The front door lock was decent, but the sliding glass door on my balcony had a rod I sometimes forgot to put in place. My bedroom window had a standard lock, the kind you can open from outside if you know how. Small apartment. Easy access if you're motivated. That's when he shifted. Just slightly. His head turned maybe 5 degrees toward me. Toward where I was lying. I don't know if he was checking whether I was still asleep or if he was looking at me for the first time. But that small movement was worse than anything else. It meant he was aware. Present. Thinking about something in relation to where I was. I did something I've never done before in my life. I sat up quickly and turned on the bedside lamp. Completely panicked reaction. Just hit the switch without thinking. The light was blinding for a moment, and when my eyes adjusted, the chair was empty. Completely empty. The fabric was wrinkled the way it always was from the clothes I'd draped over it the week before. No impression of a person. No warmth rising from the seat. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, breathing hard, staring at that chair. Then I grabbed my phone and called the police non-emergency line. I felt stupid doing it. What was I going to tell them? That I woke up and thought someone was sitting in my chair, but they weren't there. That I couldn't even describe what I'd seen? The officer who came by was professional about it. He checked the apartment. Windows, doors, closets under the bed. Everything was locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. He asked if I'd been drinking, if I was on any new medication. I told him no to everything. He suggested I'd been half asleep, that the mind does weird things when you're between consciousness and sleep. Hypnagogic hallucinations, he called them. I thanked him and locked the door behind him. That was 4 months ago. The thing is, I started paying attention to small details after that night. The chair itself, for instance. I moved it out of my bedroom completely, but that didn't stop the feeling. Now sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I can sense that someone's been in my apartment, not necessarily in my bedroom anymore. Sometimes I'll notice a kitchen cabinet door open an inch further than I left it. Once I found my bathroom light switch in the opposite position, then I remembered. Another time, a book from my nightstand was on my dresser instead. I've upgraded everything. New locks. Security system. I even installed a small camera pointing at my bed. Every morning I check the footage, and every morning it shows exactly what you'd expect. Just me sleeping. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, that someone knows how to move through my space without triggering anything. The worst part isn't the possibility of someone being there. It's the knowledge that my memory of that night, that man in the chair, is becoming less certain. Was he really there? Was the officer right? The doubt is almost worse than the fear. I still wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, and before I turn on the light, I look toward where my chair used to be. Part of me hopes I'll see him again just so I'll know I wasn't crazy. And part of me, the part that's been growing stronger over these 4 months, hopes I never see anything again, because then I could tell myself it never happened at all. But I know it did. I need to tell you about something that happened to me 3 months ago. I still don't sleep well because of it. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in Portland. Nothing fancy, just a place I can afford. I've got a routine. Work, come home, eat dinner, watch some TV, bed around 11. Pretty standard stuff. On this particular night, I went to bed around 11:30. I remember checking my phone, setting it on the nightstand, and turning off the lamp. My bedroom door was closed, which was normal. I keep it closed because it helps with airflow, and I sleep better that way. I woke up at 3:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I looked at my phone. I didn't wake up suddenly, or scared. I just woke up the way you do sometimes in the middle of the night for no reason. Bladder pressure, you know. I needed to use the bathroom. My apartment is small. The bathroom is right off the kitchen, which is right across from my bedroom. So I got out of bed, opened my door, and walked down the short hallway in the dark. I didn't turn on any lights because I was still mostly asleep, and I know my apartment well enough to navigate it blindfolded. As I passed the kitchen, I noticed something. The kitchen window, the one above my sink, there was a slight glow coming through it. Not a lot. Just enough that I could make out the counter space and the faucet. I figured it was the street light outside, which is actually pretty common on clear nights. I used the bathroom, flushed, and washed my hands. When I turned off the bathroom light, I was standing in the kitchen again. And that's when I realized what had been bothering me. That glow from the window was too bright. Brighter than it usually was at night. The street light is half a block away, and it usually just creates a general dimness. This was different. I walked over to the sink and looked out the window. There was a person standing in my backyard. Just standing there. Maybe 8 feet from the window, between my fence and my garden shed. I could see them because the streetlight was behind them, silhouetting their shape. They were completely still, and they were facing toward my house, toward my window, toward me. I stepped back immediately. My heart rate jumped hard. I didn't turn on any lights. I just stood there in the dark kitchen, trying to process what I'd just seen. The logical part of my brain started working. Could it be someone just passing through? My yard isn't fenced on one side. There's a gap where the fence got damaged years ago, and the landlord never fixed it. Someone could walk through there pretty easily. But who walks through someone's backyard in the middle of the night and just stands there? I moved to the side of the window where I couldn't be seen and looked out again. The person was still there. Same position. Same complete stillness. I grabbed my phone and called the non-emergency police line. I explained the situation. The dispatcher was professional and calm. She asked if the person had done anything threatening. I said no. They were just standing there. She said officers would be dispatched to check it out, but it might take a few minutes. She asked me to stay on the line. While I was on the phone with dispatch, I heard my front door alarm chime. The quiet electronic beep that sounds when someone opens my front door. That's when I realized I never locked my front door. I'd come home from work, brought groceries in and never locked it. Never even thought about it because I live in a decent neighborhood and I'm usually good about it. But that night I just forgotten. I told the dispatcher someone just opened my front door. She immediately switched to a more serious tone and told me to leave the house. Right now. Don't stop for anything. Go to the neighbor's place or wait outside for police. I didn't go to the neighbor's. I ran. I was wearing sleep clothes and no shoes, but I ran out through the back of my kitchen, through my bedroom window that I'd never closed all the way, and into the yard. I didn't see the person anymore. The silhouette was gone. I made it to the front of the building and waited on the street under a porch light at a neighbor's place. Police arrived about 4 minutes later. 2 officers. They cleared my apartment. Found nothing. No one inside. No signs of forced entry on the front door. The lock just wasn't engaged. They checked my backyard with flashlights. No one there either. No footprints, nothing. They asked me to describe what I saw. I told them about the silhouette. They seemed skeptical but took my statement. They suggested I lock my doors, install better outdoor lighting, that sort of thing. I never found out who was in my backyard that night. Police checked the area, talked to a few neighbors, but there was nothing to find. No crime committed, no trespassing that they could prove. What gets me, what I still think about, is that the person at the sink and the person at my front door had to be the same person. Or at least, they were there at the same time. And the timing was too close to be unrelated. So someone didn't just happen to be walking through my yard in the middle of the night. Someone went there deliberately, stood there deliberately, and then came to my front door. And I was asleep inside. For however long they were standing at that window, I was sleeping 15 feet away, completely unaware. I'll never know what would have happened if my bladder hadn't woken me up at exactly 3:47 a.m. I've tried not to think about it too much, but it's there. That unanswered question that sits with you. I lock my doors now. Every single one. Even when I'm just getting the mail. And I don't sleep as deeply as I used to.